In the early to mid-2000s, video games had entered the era of the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox Classic. Popular genres at that time were RPG and first-person shooters. The PlayStation 2 and Xbox had popular military combat games such as SOCOM and Rainbow Six, respectively. But when it came to FPS games, PS2 and Xbox had Medal of Honor Frontline and its many follow-ups as well. But an Xbox exclusive that remains extremely popular to this day is Halo Combat Evolved. Halo was popular for its graphics, music, gameplay, storyline, and replay value, which left a major legacy for the years to come, such as spawning an animated limited series, a live-action limited series compiled to a movie, an animated movie, novels, comic books, and recently, a live-action TV series. A game developing company known as Guerrilla Games would create a PlayStation exclusive video game that was originally designed to be known as a Halo killer, but unfortunately did not achieve such a title. Still, the game series was praised, yet criticized for certain things such as multiplayer, graphics, and narrative at first. But as new consoles arrived, the series became quite popular, but unfortunately, its popularity wouldn't last very long. That series is Killzone, for this is the topic of today, the rise and fall of Killzone. Troops of the ISA, prepare for battle. Soldiers of Helghan, prepare to annihilate and massacre the ISA. Originally released on the PlayStation 2 on November 4, 2004, this is the very first title in the series. Killzone is a first-person shooter game developed by Guerrilla Games, published by SCEE, and the first game in the series. Killzone's history began with Lost Boy Games, who rebranded to Guerrilla Games in 2003 after developing a series of work-for-hire Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games. Before the launching of Killzone in late 2004, the studio had no real experience developing shooters for mono-home console platforms. So, they created two shooters, Killzone and Shellshock Nam 67. Shellshock became a long-forgotten game, but Killzone turned out to be a success. The game takes place in an era of space colonization. Planet Earth, after a serious nuclear war between its nations, formed a major government of the richest surviving governments and industries to explore space colonization, eventually setting a solar system outside of Sol. Alpha Centauri is a system with two planets, the lush and blossoming Vecta, the other rich in energy and supply but inhospitable Helghan. These two planets were purchased by the Helghan Corporation after the UCN decided to auction them. However, after Helghas's economic policies threatened to undermine the UCN's financial system, the UCN invaded Vecta and removed the Helghas after failing to impose financial sanctions. This forced the Helghas to colonize Helghan, a harsh and brutal planet, and deeply resenting the loss of Vecta. The planet's harsh environment forced the Helghas to adapt and mutate so much that they can no longer be considered human. They are stronger, faster, and more resilient than their human cousins and possess a burning hatred for humanity. Except for a small number of half-breed Helghas and trained troopers, they require a gas mask and air processing tank. The Helghast are a faction of human descendants that were banished from the planet of Vecta to the brutal and harsh planet of Helghan many generations ago. The Helghan Empire recovered from its defeat in the First Extrasolar War and were united under the leadership of their nation's emperor, Scholar Visari. Under the guidance of Visari, the Helghast launched a blitzkrieg campaign against the neighboring planet of Vecta. An ISA soldier named Captain Jan Templar fights against the Helghast invasion, but the ISA suffers heavy losses with the imminent invasion. As Templar and the rest of the ISA retreats, he meets up with other allies such as Shadow Marshal Luger, Gregor Haka, and Ricardo Velázquez, also known as Rico, and together they set out to repel the invasion. However, there is a traitor in the ISA who actually let Helghast into Vecta. Killzone is a first-person shooter where you can play as 4 different characters, 3 of them unlocked in different stages. The 4 playable characters are Jan Templar, Luger, Haka, and Rico. Jan Templar is usually played by beginners and he could equip various weapons just like the others. Luger is best for stealth sneak against enemies, and her knife is useful when attacking silently, as well as her silenced gun. Haka shows improved accuracy with his trademark weapon, and Rico is her typical trigger-happy and Hellgas-hating soldier. In campaign mode, you'll journey through various areas, regions, and bases in the game. In battlefields, you can play against friends and other people as well, either by choosing to side with the ISA soldiers or the Hellgast. In campaign mode, Killzone is divided by 11 levels. Players will be outgunned and outnumbered fighting against the Hellgast army which has invaded Vecta. In certain levels, you'll encounter Luger, Haka, and Rico. These three become playable once players encounter them. After beating the game, they can either play as the other three apart from Jan Templar and beat the game with any of them, or take a break for campaign mode. They can play against friends and other people in battlefields and online multiplayer mode. The graphics during gameplay are pretty much like the other PS2 games. However, the intro has a CGI scene which will be later seen on PS3 with games such as Killzone 2 and 3 with updated graphics and more gore. Though there is no music during gameplay unlike in later games, the music only plays when beating the stage, filling a mission, and during scenarios. Joris Daman is the main composer of the Killzone series. The sound effects are amazing, such as explosions, shooting, and the voice acting were icing on the cake. The fun thing players found about this game is that almost every ISA trooper has American accent, while all Hellgast have British accent. Killzone Liberation is a third-person action shooter video game that was developed by Guerrilla Games and published by Sony Computer Entertainment, and it is the sequel to the 2004 first-person shooter Killzone, and bridges the gap between Killzone and Killzone 2. The game was released on Halloween 2006 on a PlayStation Portable in North America, and later released in Europe and Australia in November of that same year. This game, unlike its predecessor, is a shoot-'em-up video game rather than a first-person shooter. Players could play on multiplayer via the ad hoc. They can also choose between two teams of the ISA and the Hellgast army, and they can choose a character as well. Variety of duels include deathmatch, team deathmatch, dual deathmatch, capture the flag, and assault. 2 months have passed since the events of Killzone. The Hellgast have been dealt a heavy blow, but the war is far from over. The Hellgast still control larger parts of planet Vecta. Although the ISA continues to press on, it's still losing ground. The sadistic Hellgast general Armin Metrak and his right-hand man, Colonel Tendon Kobar, have captured 3 key figures of the ISA. Now, Jan Templar and his partner, Rico Velasquez, must fight against the Hellgast army to rescue the hostages and put an end to the tyrannical occupation of Vecta. Players take control of Jan Templar, the main protagonist of the game. Templar can carry grenades, smoke grenades, landmines, C4, and can equip various types of weapons of the ISA and the Hellgast, where he can find them in weapons cache located in different areas of the stage. By collecting various pickups in the form of money cases, players unlock new types of weapons in the game. Certain upgrades, abilities, and more explosives can also be unlocked by earning points in the challenges of the 5 chapters of the game. The purpose of the game is to guide Jan Templar throughout 5 chapters fighting against many Hellgast troops, bosses, and more. Players must complete a variety of objectives in order to save the ISA hostages from the clutches of General Metrak and Colonel Kobar. Failure to stop them means the end of the ISA and the beginning of the Hellgast tyrannical reign. The game distances itself from first-person shooter origins and takes a third-person view. The game features a top-down isometric view in contrast to the original Killzone for the PS2, and this is like a mixture between an FPS game and a dungeon crawler. There are CGI sequences at times, but still the in-game scenarios are very well made. Killzone 2 was developed by Guerrilla Games and published by Sony Computer Entertainment, released on February 27, 2009 for the PlayStation 3. Killzone 2 takes the series to HD, thus enriching its environment, characters, and so on. Upon its release, Killzone 2 demolished all expectations, and it received worldwide critical acclaim by many critics, reviewers, and fans of the first game and its follow-up, Liberation. 2 years have passed since the Helghast assault on the planet Vecta, and the ISA has launched a massive full-scale assault on their enemy's homeworld of Helghan. The goal of the ISA is to capture the supreme leader of Helghan, Emperor Scholar Visari, and bring the Helghast war machine to a halt. Enter Thomas Shevchenko, also known as Sev, a battle-hardened veteran of the Special Forces unit, the Legion, assigned to the Alpha Team, who goes on a mission to take out the Helghast threat. Soon, Sev discovers that he is not the only one fighting enemy forces, but the entire planet itself. Players don't take the role of Jan Templar from Killzone and Killzone Liberation, but now they play as a new main character, Sev. The game is presented almost entirely as a first-person perspective aside from vehicular combat. Killzone 2 introduces a lean and peek cover system, allowing players to take cover and then pop out and fire at enemies, and it stays at first-person view at times. Players can also pilot vehicles in some points of the game, such as a tank and an exoskeleton. The 6-axis motion control feature is also utilized in performing certain actions, such as turning a valve, arming an explosive charge, and sniping. Multiplayer is for players who want to challenge others, such as people from around the world, or against friends and family if they want. The online multiplayer is based on various types of classes in which players can choose, and also all types of weapons depending on which class they choose. Players in Warzone play as either an ISA soldier or a Helghast soldier. The purpose of the game is to guide Shevchenko and his ISA allies throughout several missions in the hostile planet of Helghan in order to capture Emperor Visari. There will be various enemies and they will be severely outnumbered and outgunned. If players want to take a break from campaign, they can also play in multiplayer mode called Warzone. In Warzone, they fight against people from around the world, friends, or family members. Most of the animation was used by using motion capture with some animations, reloads for example, done by hand. Facial animation was done using blend shapes with bones for the jaw and the eyes. Lead tech artist Paulus Banning explains that the main reason for going with blend shapes was the relative ease with which they can be transferred to different faces. It will also provide a more artist-friendly way of editing the facial animation rig. These graphics are much more updated than the previous games and it looks realistic. Maya 8.5 was used for the animations while Motion Builder was used for motion capture. Joris Deman was the composer of the game's music. He scored 60 minutes of in-game music and 30 minutes of live orchestral score for the game, recorded at Abbey Road Studios in London with the Nimrod Studio Orchestra. The music shows how epic this game can be in many scenes and parts where players are shooting Helghast soldiers. Some things were criticized in some missions where the overused shading that made the game look too dark at times. Other criticisms involve players resuscitating their comrades, but they cannot do the same for players, but that'll change when Killzone 3 was released. Killzone 3 is a first-person shooter developed by Guerrilla Games and published by Sony Computer Entertainment America on February 22, 2011. Killzone 3 is a sequel to Killzone 2 and one of the most successful titles in the series. Upon its release, Killzone 3 demolished all expectations with new and returning gameplay features and a story about the effects of war and so much more, and how a power struggle can lead to civil war after the death of a leader that they worshipped. During the events of Killzone 2, Helghast leader Emperor Scholar Visari is killed by Thomas Shevchenko and Rico Velasquez, but the war is far from over. The Helghast forces have mounted a brutal counterattack, prompting the ISA to smoke out the evacuation plan of planet Helghan. The ISA finds itself outmanned, outgunned, and outnumbered as the Helghast have new battalions, arsenal, and weaponry. Sev and Griko are led by Captain Jason Narville and must now find a way to escape Helghan and defeat the enemy, but there will be twists and turns. Meanwhile, there is a power struggle within the Helghan Senate, as one of the Helghast officers, Johann Stahl, has machinations of his own. Killzone 3 is a first-person shooter video game where you take control of Sev, the hero of the game. In this game, players can play with a PS3 controller or with a PlayStation Move controller. They can play in the campaign to learn of the story of this game, or if they like, play with other people in multiplayer. The multiplayer features new classes, DLC, and more. The game has more enhanced gameplay than the second game, which is really cool. You can equip a variety of weapons, fire from tanks and ships, being piloted automatically by your fellow ISA pilots, and more. Boss battles in campaign mode, such as the one against that huge bipedal tank in one of the game stages, makes this game absolutely epic in terms of fighting against bosses in this game. Players in Killzone 3 take the role of Thomas Shevchenko and are accompanied by Rico Velasquez in submissions, and also with Captain Narville as well. Even with Visari dead, the Helghast continue to fight against the forces of the ISA. Players need to learn more about their enemy and use new tools, weapons, and arsenal to continue the fight. New enemies in this game are introduced, such as a Capture Trooper. The Capture Trooper runs at the player, and once caught up, they have merely a second to use melee combat against them. If they waste time to defend and kill them, the Capture Trooper will stab them, immediately killing them. Some Hollywood stars, such as James Remar, Malcolm McDowell, and Ray Winstone, have lent their voices in the game. The character of Captain Narville fitted James Remar very well. Malcolm McDowell was very epic as a maniacal Johann Stahl. Reviews for Killzone 3 were generally positive. Some criticized the voice acting as not being perfect, thus lacking emotive punch, and the reason for not receiving a perfect 10 out of 10. Other reviewers, such as Games TM, criticized the storyline, and when comparing it to Killzone 2, said the game takes inexplicable backward steps in almost every department. Killzone Mercenary is a first-person shooter video game for the PlayStation Vita, released in September 2013. Developed by Guerrilla Games, this is the second handheld game in the Killzone series and fifth installment overall. Mercenary was met with positive reviews for its quality as a portable console first-person shooter. Praise was given to the game's visuals and controls, but criticism was aimed at its story and campaign length. The story of Killzone Mercenary bridges the gap between Killzone 2 and 3 while revisiting key events of the first Killzone and Liberation during the invasion of Vecta. The main protagonist of the game is a mercenary named Aaron Danner. He executes operations for the ISA and is supplied by mysterious weapons dealer Blackjack and aided at times by his boss, Anders Benoit. For the first time in a Killzone campaign, players can fight alongside Helghast forces as well as ISA specialists, carrying out missions that regular soldiers cannot. Players are free to decide which tactics and loadouts they will use to fulfill their contract. Employers will reward players with money if successfully completed. The game utilizes the PS Vita's touchscreen and rear touch panel. The game was revealed at Gamescom 2012 and utilized a modified version of Killzone 3's rendering engine, allowing volumetric lighting and smoke, high-resolution environment textures, gleaming metal, and realistic-looking shadows. As for the music, Joris de Man was not the composer of the soundtrack, instead leaving Walter Christian Mayer as a composer. A senior producer at the studio of Guerrilla Games said, "The production time was around less than 2 years after converting Killzone 3's engine. Mercenary offered the series' biggest weapon loadout yet, accommodating a wider variety of playstyles than in past Killzone titles. Because of the redefined damage model, the weapons apparently felt slightly more powerful than those in previous installments. Killzone Shadowfall was originally released as a launch title for the PlayStation 4 on November 15, 2013 in North America and 14 days later in Europe. This game is the sixth installment in the series and takes place 30 years after the events of Killzone 3. Shadowfall introduces a new set of characters, putting players in the role of Lucas Kellen, a Shadow Marshal who is investigating a rising threat in the continuing conflict between the Vectans and the Helghast. Unlike previous titles, Killzone Shadowfall focuses more on open-ended and stealth-based gameplay than its predecessors in the single-player campaign mode. The game also introduced a new proprietary in-house game engine called Decima. Reviews for the game were mixed to positive. It was praised for its visuals, art design, multiplayer modes, while criticism was directed towards the game's single-player mode and several gameplay features, although several critics appreciated the game's attempt to change direction from its predecessors. Still, it was also criticized for its lack of innovation as one of the first 8th-generation titles. The story follows the petricite detonation that rendered the planet of Helghan uninhabitable. This event is known as the Terracide. After coming to an uneasy truce, the ISA grants refuge to the Helghast survivors on the planet, Vecta, allowing them to colonize half the planet, and with that half dubbed New Helghan. The two civilizations are separated from each other by a massive security fortification called the Wall. It was constructed due to the mutual hatred and resentment they bear over the previous war. Most of the game takes place in Vecta City, as well as a prison in New Helghan, and Helghan, the original homeworld of the Helghast, now dead and shattered due to the Terracide. Previous titles portrayed a large war zone with numerous allies by the player's side at any given time and an overall linear design. Shadowfall, however, opts for a more open-ended level design and allows players to utilize stealth to approach their missions in addition to engaging in direct confrontations with enemies. Levels are much more open than in previous titles, allowing for multiple ways or routes to complete objectives. In almost every mission, Kellen has his default firearms and is accompanied by a robotic drone known as the Owl. The Owl lays down cover fire, hacking, and other abilities as well. During the second half onward, the player is occasionally joined by Echo as an ally, where she is able to snipe enemies marked by the player. Players can also use Helghast weapons from earlier Killzone games, albeit in new forms and variations. Kellen's rifle is the LSR-44, a recoil-free hybrid assault-charged sniper rifle that functions much like a miniaturized railgun. Multiplayer is also included in this game and it's shipped with 10 maps. Users can create their own map presets called War Zones, which they can be shared with others or promoted by the Killzone community. Classes, abilities, and weapons are unlocked from the start. The three classes of multiplayer are Assault, Scout, and Support. Skill enhancements are also unlocked based on completing challenges unique to a class the player chooses. Alongside with a competitive multiplayer, a 4-player online cooperative mode was introduced with the Intercept expansion pack, released on June 24, 2014. After Shadowfall, Guerrilla Games has not made any new announcements for a new Killzone title in the works. Many considered Shadowfall to be one of the weakest titles in the series, and despite the game selling 2.1 million units by January 2014, the Killzone series appears to have faded into obscurity. However, players can still play as Colonel Mail Radek in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. And a fun fact is that Radek was voiced by Sean Pertwee of Event Horizon and Gotham fame. Guerrilla Games would later create a title that would demolish all expectations, Horizon Zero Dawn, which was Guerrilla's most successful game, and recently its sequel, Horizon Forbidden West was released and reviews were generally positive. It's fair to assume that the Killzone series doesn't have a future. At the start of 2021, the website Killzone.com was retired, with the site now offering a short statement along with a redirect link to the PlayStation website. Who knows if in the future someone might be able to bring back Killzone with a brand new title that serves as either a revival or a reboot. But as they say, tomorrow never knows. Only 3 episodes of the Season 1 reboot left. Thanks for watching, everyone. This is John of Video Games in the World, signing off.